Have you ever seen an ink blended sunset background that made you think, I wish I could make blended backgrounds like that? Well, if I can do it, you can do it too. Hi everyone, I'm Rebecca Keppel, and in today's video, I experiment with some Gina K Designs inks to create a sunset and moonrise background. And both these backgrounds are perfect for the new Gina K Designs Serene Skies stamp set that features tons of silhouette images. So let's take a look at the Serene Skies stamp set first. Here's the new Gina K Designs Serene Skies stamp set. So it's got tons of silhouette images. It's got two circles that could be either a moon or a sun. It's got clouds, it's got birds, lines that they can sit on, a background ground area, and several beautiful sentiments. Now let's pair it with some Gina K Designs inks, and I'll talk about how I found it easy to make a sunset blended background and then a moonrise blended background. The first thing that I recommend if you're using especially dye inks is to put a layer of ink down onto the cardstock. Here I'm working with a blending brush and Gina K Designs Lemon Drop ink. I have my piece of paper on a grip mat from Waffle Flower, and I'm placing down a layer of this lemon drop ink. Everything else will build up on top of it, and you really won't see a lot of the lemon drop, but it makes it easier to not see white spots. So once I have that done, I'm going in with some bubblegum pink ink, also from Gina K Designs. Now, you have seen me blend with lots of different types of inks. I think especially distress oxides tend to be really creamy. They tend to have a very opaque effect, and the dye inks, I think, have a different effect. So for this sunset background, I didn't want that creamy look of the distress oxide inks. So I thought, let me see how smooth I can get these dye inks to blend out. And the other thing that you want to do is to remember your cardstock matters. So the smoothest cardstock you can find is probably the best. I'm using Hammermill. It's a very smooth cardstock, makes it really easy to blend. I've added some Coral Reef ink at the top. I think that top part is starting to get where I want it. So now I go back in with all the colors that I've used. I have Peach Bellini. It's a slightly lighter orange than the Coral Reef. I have that bubblegum pink again, and I'm adding the Peach Bellini down below over that lemon drop. So no real spots will be completely yellow. There'll be an orangish haze and then a pink haze, and it really just matters how many times you go over it again and again and again to get that smooth look. So with oxides, I tend to get a line in between the colors, and it's easy to blend out that line with the oxides because they're so creamy. With the dye inks, just keep going over and over and over until you get that smooth look between the colors. Once that's done, I do heat set it just a touch, just because I have put a ton of ink on there and now I want to stamp on it. So definitely recommend a little bit of heat setting or set it aside for the evening and come back to it later. Now I have that bottom stamp that represents the ground at the bottom, and this is also a silhouette stamp. So I've placed it inside my original Misty. I have the cardstock in the center, and the way that the cardstock's staying in place is I have another grip mat in my original Misty. I'm using Gina K Designs black amalgam ink to stamp. This is going to take 2 stamps because of all that ink underneath. So to get that black crisp look of the silhouettes, definitely I'm going with double stamping all around. So even with the sentiment, I'll double stamp it just very carefully so I don't get anything smudged. Same thing with the birds on a wire. I like this stamp because they're already set up for you, but there are other stamps, and I'll use them later in the video, where you can put the wire down, stamp the wire, and then stamp whatever birds you want on the wire. So you can see I've put some tape on the sides. That's just because I don't want to have to do a ton of cleaning afterwards. So anything that stamps off the edge, I've put a little bit of Spellbinders tape to just keep that part of the MISTI and the grip mat clean. Here I've stamped a sun that is setting, and I used the Coral Reef ink for that, but I decided to go back to the black for the clouds. You could definitely do pink clouds here and just really double, triple stamp it so that you get the effect of those clouds in front of the sun. I just love the way that the black looks on that colorful background, and I have a couple of birds in flight as well. This card came together so easy once all of that ink blending is done. At first I thought I'd create another sunset card, but then I decided to create a moonrise card instead. And I'm using the same techniques that I used for the sunset. I'm starting with a white piece of cardstock on the grip mat. It's an A2 piece of white hammermill cardstock. I have Gina K Designs Sea Glass with a blending brush that I've created in the background. That's going to be my first layer of ink. It's going to make it really easy to not have white spots showing through because most of the white is completely covered with that sea glass ink. Now I'll come in with some blue raspberry, and you can see that I'm going pretty far down onto the card because I realized that the bottom with just the sea glass was pretty light, and I wanted this to be an evening card. So I did cover up some of that sea glass on the bottom with a light hint of the blue raspberry, and then I'm coming in with wild lilac at the top, and that's going to be the darkest because it's combining sea glass, blue raspberry, and wild lilac together. So again, just going over all of these colors a few times to really get that smooth blend, and then zap it with a heat tool for a little bit so that you can dry out that ink before you go stamping on it. This time I decided to create my own birds on a wire, so I have some tape on the sides once again to protect just the grip mat from having to be cleaned too much. I'm just being really honestly lazy, and I want to be able to just quickly go from one stamp to another. So the line, you can curve it, you can have it straight, however you want. And I am again stamping with that amalgam ink. It stamps beautifully on top of the dye ink. Since it has a little bit of the other properties as well, it doesn't sink into the dye inks, which is perfect for this technique of stamping silhouettes on top of dye ink. And then also having to heat set it a little bit, that just helps really not sink it into that dye ink on the cardstock. So I have the ground again, and I've chosen a few birds. I will be double stamping all of these stamps again because I really think that is the way to get the crispest black look. So now I'll add a few more birds, a bird in flight as well, and then heat set that because this ink does not stay wet long, but I am famous, especially when I double stamp, for smearing ink. So I didn't want to do that. So make sure you just heat set it just a touch so that you can make sure that it doesn't smear. Okay, now I have a little anti-static powder tool, and I'm stamping up the sentiment in Versamark ink this time. And that is that kind of ink that is sticky, that the embossing powder can stick to. This also will stay on top of the dye ink. No worries about it sinking into the paper, even if you have all that dye ink. I poured some white embossing powder on top, and then I'm heat setting it with a heat tool once again. This heat tool that I'm using now is a new one because my old one kind of died. It has two settings. So to dry the ink, I use the lighter setting. To heat emboss, I use the higher setting. Now I'm ready to work on the moon, and you can see the moon was so sticky. The stamp was such a high quality stamp that it was so sticky that it tore up a little bit of the paper, and that's what I was worried about with heat setting the ink. But It's going to create a crater moon. I'm using puffy white ink, and I thought that would create the look of a crater, but the little tear in the paper actually creates more of that shadowed look that the moon has from craters. I'm using a white paint pen to add tiny little dots and small hand-drawn stars just to the top of this card. If I had thought of it first, I would have used splatter to put a little bit of stars all over, but I didn't think about it until after, so that's why the paint pen really comes in handy here. I love the Serene Skies stamp set, and it pairs beautifully with any ink blended sky background that you create. If you do check it out, I hope you'll find some of these tips and tricks helpful to create your own sunset or moonrise background. As always, I want to thank you so much for stopping by and spending time with me today. Please stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll see you again soon. Today's video, what was the word that I wanted? Experimented. Experimented. Like explored? No. Just, no. Sky background. Okay, one more time.